Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. So today is Wednesday the 28th of, I think, April? Yeah, 4th month, April. So for the accountability section, I'll say I'm starting late and I'll talk about the reason why I'm starting late today in a second, but before that I'll say that I have finished Pinball Arcade with the exception that the 4 of the tables I don't own. They're all past 1990s, 2000 era, 2010 era Stern tables, and I pretty much hated them all, so yeah. The Star Trek movie reboot Stern table, didn't like it. The Casino High Roller table, I didn't really like it. The Ripley's Believe It or Not kind of has an interesting theme, so I'm a little bit more lenient on that one, but it's still not particularly a good game. After that, there was a Harley Davidson table that just wasn't well designed, and after that, there was Big Buck Hunter, and I just kind of hated that theme because just the idea of shooting wildlife and buck hunting and pinball just did not work well for me. On top of which, the table design didn't work that well. Now, there was a good Stern table called Mustang, and as somebody who doesn't really care one bit about Ford Mustangs or cars in general, I was very shocked to see how much love and care and just good gameplay and good game modes and design had been put into Mustang. But then I was, after that table, fairly disappointed with. No, I was highly disappointed with Whoa Nelly, which is just like a table that feels like it's trying to be an electromechanical table from 2014 or so. I don't think 14 was the right year. But yeah, Whoa Nelly is just a terrible low effort table that has no game modes and nothing really to do. I'd rather play a real electromechanical table from the 60s than play one that has been made in the 2010s and is selling heavily on lewd images of the farmer girl next door and her sisters, and I think the actual name of the table is Whoa Nellie's Big Melons or something, and she's holding these giant melons in front of her breast. It's like, yeah, this table's trying to sell on sex more than any other pinball table I've seen, short of like the Playboy and the reskins that exist out there to add actual nudity or sell heavily on actual adult content. And it doesn't really make sense. Like, there are a few tables that maybe make some inappropriate sound effects. One of those would be another table I played, the Ghostbusters Premium table, because they have the "yes sir, he has no dick" line, and they beep it, I guess, in the family-friendly mode, but it still doesn't really feel appropriate when the Ghostbusters Premium table looks very much like a table designed for little kids, and Ghostbusters in a lot of ways feels very much like a design for a like a cartoon now, much more than the first and second movie really were. Pretty much the idea that Ghostbusters would be anything other than kids' fare ever again was lost the second that cartoon was made and the toys sold so well. And they should have just doubled down on that and said, yeah, this is a kids franchise. We should have a new Ghostbusters movie every couple of years. I guess Bloodcraft and Portalcraft, and it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to re-roll anything because there's as high of a chance to replace a 40 with a 10 or a 20 than there is to get a 50. Where in Hearthstone, replacing things actually made sense. Alright, so let's come over here. No, actually, that's the wrong place to go. After Willy-nilly, there was the... I may be forgetting a table here, but whatever. There was the Farsight Studio Doctor Who Master of Time table, which is just an awful design. And it certainly highlights a fact that Farsight Studio should have not tried to make a... see, how many missing cards would be missing here? Quite a lot. Let's see, that's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards are missing on this one. Versus 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, well, then I guess we go over here. We copy the deck. And we'll try and look at the deck and see what we can improve upon. Yeah, this seems like this is a standard paradigm shift style card. So as long as these cards are not absolutely necessary, which they may be, let's just see what we can do as far as Velsar cards for some in-game things. That's probably not terrible. I don't think we're doing Crystallize. You know what? Why even bother? Why don't I just unlist this, go back to any, just click auto. No, that's not what I thought auto was going to be at all. I thought it was just going to automatically have some algorithm to decide what to put in my deck, not that I'd have an actual randomization. There. This is probably not too bad. I guess I can replace things that I already have copies of in my deck too. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah, let's just do that. Alright. And we'll go ahead and call this Tourney and then 4/21. And we'll start putting a date there. So yeah, the Doctor Who Farsight Studio table takes some of the ideas, but not all the ideas of the real world Doctor Who table that came out probably 16 years earlier, and messes with it and makes it way worse, and is missing several features on the table. So if it was just going to be a reskin completely of the old table, that would have been fine. You could have added the new doctors, since the old table stops at the original 7 doctors and I think ignores the Western 8th Doctor, which is again fine by me. And you could have just brought it up to the 13 Doctor regenerations, incarnations that existed, and added some more modes, or just randomized some modes around, and you could have just kind of not changed anything. But instead, what they did is they took some of the shots and forgot some of the shots, and some of the shots that they took weren't that good in the first table, so it's kind of silly. They added nothing really at all. They just changed how some things worked, and then they seem to have been completely hamstrung. And I imagine this is true for anybody trying to make a Doctor Who game, and that's why all Doctor Who games I've seen have been pretty awful. Clearly this was after the War Doctor had been teased or announced, or was about to be teased or announced. So the War Doctor is there, but then you have this weird story that to my fuzzy memory of someone who doesn't watch Doctor Who anymore, just doesn't really make a lot of sense. That Missy is bringing together like the Vastra Narada, where Missy never even interacted with the Vastra Narada. They really only showed up in two lines of 2 episodes, and the Silence, which I'm not sure that the Missy ever dealt with the Silence either. And then the potato-headed aliens, I don't remember the names, and then the ones that look like tentacle octopus legs aliens, I don't remember the name. And then they kind of de-emphasize, but they have the Cybermen and the Daleks and the Weeping Angels as characters, and she brings them all together to defeat Doctor Who. Almost beat for beat copy of what happened in previous seasons with the Pandorica and the Silence, in a lot of ways too. So it's just trying to repeat beats without actually telling that same story. And it ignores all companions. It doesn't really do anything super interesting with the TARDIS. Spot isn't mentioned at all. There aren't really any lines from this show as far as dialogue that are really good. There aren't any good call-outs from any of the Doctors, and it is mostly centered around the old man Doctor that came out after the 3 more interesting Doctors, the David Tennant and the Doctor after that, and and yeah, the War Doctor's not that interesting as a character because he only really shows up in a movie, and they don't touch or do anything with the old Doctors at all. So yeah, Doctor Who is also, Master of Time and Space is also just an incredibly empty table. It has a multi-ball mode, but it's like 1 3-ball multi-ball, and that's it. It has like 1 jackpot, but it kind of has a weird progressive scoring system that is similar to what is in the very, very similar, just like a complete ripoff of what the original Doctor Who pinball table had. And you're just fighting Missy now, who is the reincarnation of the Master, who you were fighting in the old table, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So if I liked Doctor Who, I wouldn't be happy. If I didn't like Doctor Who, I wouldn't be happy. There's like 3 sonic screwdriver toys on the table, but they don't really do anything. The table's incredibly dark. It doesn't really have Yeah, it doesn't even have that video mode where you were being chased by a Dalek and you had to jump over things that was in the original table. It's just like lazily made for no reason. When and you almost certainly, if you were going to get Doctor Who Master of Time and Space, you would have paid $10 for a worse pinball table than what you could have gotten in a bundle for better pinball tables. One could only hope that they had made the Master in Time and Space before they got the license to the original Doctor Who table, and that it went that direction, and not that they got worse later. But it pretty much proves that, yeah, Farsight Studio, the makers of Pinball Arcade, should not make their own tables, whereas Pinball FX and Zen Studios have done very well making their own tables. Maybe it's not for actual pinball fans of the old, and it is more tables designed for fans of new, faster, more animated video games, little kids in general. But maybe that is the only way pinball in any sense is going to succeed, is that we're going to just have to give up the ghost of pinball being a real world mechanical object, and for 99.9% of all pinball players, it is all going to be done through emulation. And there's a lot of argument for that, honestly. I don't know if I really won there legitimately, or if that person just decided to concede. And then you have Ghostbusters Premium table, which is like the only Stern Premium emulated table, because it is a 2016 table. It has problems, I've heard, physically being, and I can see why. It's just like full of toys, full of everything. It's a terrible table design, where somebody, seemingly a new name in the field, figured they may never be able to build another table again, and that's probably a fair concern for any pinball table these days. And so they just threw everything in the kitchen sink and into the table, and it's just crazy. There's literally 5 captive balls in 2 separate containers on the table. There's a ramp that you almost never are going to be able to hit. There is a 3D model of the Stay Puft's Marshmallow Man that they don't seem to really even do much with. There is a 3D model of the firehouse in Ghostbusters, which they don't seem to do much with. There is a 3D model, which oddly is better than the 3D model of the firehouse of the public library, which they don't really do anything with. All the 3D modeling in pinball tables is really just set dressing, and sometimes it's alright, but most of the time it seems like they just wasted a lot of time making a model for no reason. There's a hologram lens where a screen at a 45-degree angle is projecting onto a lens, so you can see it. It's projecting downward towards the lens, so the image is reflected, so you see through the lens and you see the image of like a Slimer on one of the shots. There's a scoop. There's 2 scoops. There's pop-up bumpers that are completely hidden, and I personally just kind of have a pet peeve, I think, of seeing not being able to see pop-up bumpers, because if you think about it, that's the thing you do want to see always, is when there are pop-up bumpers on the tables, you want to be able to see them pop up. You want to hear that sound. You want to see the lights flash. If all of that is hidden by a giant 3D model of like New York City buildings, which is what it is hidden, with a Slimer that's on this crane, and you're, I think, supposed to just ignore the fact that you can see the crane, which seems a little crazy. It doesn't really make sense.
I get the gist of it.
So yeah, you you just don't have anything. There was an interesting event on the Mustang table in that they had a spinner holding, just like hovering in the air, so it was only attached by one side, which makes an interesting shot because that means the ball can kind of come from an angle and still hit the spinner, but it almost certainly means that if you hit that spinner, it's going to bend eventually. I've never seen any other table that didn't have a spinner screwed down tightly, both on the left and the right side. Right, well. Let's see if we can do this. This, that.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Evolve.
Coming at you.
The design fault lies with you.
And evolve.
I do believe we have a case.
Then end the turn. And yeah, that pretty much just ended my experience with Pinball Arcade, which is good because I have a whole bunch of uploading and scheduling that needs to happen. And I need to just really double down on all that garbage. Also, I'm probably just like 5 days away from missing a scheduled thing. Some of my content has started premiering. I'm not finding that premieres really work any better, but I'll give them a much longer test too. Okay. Do I want to crystallize this for 5? Do we have a neutral card? Maybe. Let's see what this does.
Howl cyclones! Devour the land! Be gone!
Oh, gone and mucked things up.
Hit that.
I am such a
And
genius.
hit that. And then return that.
Such a good guinea pig.
See, I don't know if there was a real reason for that to happen. We did that. I think we should do this, really. Okay, so then the other reason why I was late is, well, one, I overslept, so we can't really do anything about that. Well, there probably is something I could do about it. But I was goofing off. I do recognize that I have backburnered several side projects that I need to get back to eventually, but I'm trying to focus on working on projects that actually affect my YouTube channel instead of just working with like the Circuit Playground Express, which is something that should have no priority on at all. That's just me entertaining myself. Makes a lot more sense to work on my server, where at some point that might actually be useful for backups. Okay. Do this. put this on the field.
Gizmos like this every millennium.
In the turn, I suppose. So the other thing, though, I was goofing off on, is I was thinking about, would there be a way, and the answer is probably no. Like, the answer is most definite, is more than likely no to this question from the beginning, but the desire is somewhat there to turn that no into a yes. So I was thinking, is there a way that we could have some kind of visual element to coverage of adult games? And particularly the vast majority of adult games available on Steam, we all know, is the anime style games.
I'll get production up and running.
Do this. And then the turn. Interesting. So here I have a game on Steam called Love Dating, and I was using this as an example. You can see it's tag nudity, mature content, sexual content. Although I can attest that none of the screenshots are really that bad. So what I was thinking is, what kind of visual effects does OBS allow for? And see, I didn't go as far as trying these stream FX visual effects, which probably could just put like blurred squares dancing around the entirety of the screen. And that's really what it comes down to, is if you have an image like this, there's contextual things like the butt here that you can't really filter out without deep AI, same as like the cleavage here. It would take a human to go, let's blur this because this is too much cleavage or this is too much butt. And since this is clothed, I wouldn't agree with that either way. But what you can do is you can target skin tones and that color. And so I was goofing off, just seeing at a basic level, can you color shift or chroma key or color key, it's chroma key that I eventually settled on, to change an image like this so that it would kind of blur it out. And see, right now I have it on skin tone, but arguably it might be just like pink is the better color to target nipples and maybe lower genitalia. I'm not sure how many games you even have to worry about lower genitalia being an issue. Darn it. I've phoned this up horribly. I'm gonna run out of cards if I'm not careful. So I'll show you in about what I got done in 20 minutes. So here's the chroma key as it is. And so take note, what it does here is it takes anything that is somewhat similar to that pinkish pale skin tone, and it turns it into black. Notice it also has turned hair that would have been a dark blue hair into more of a purple hair, and it's removing kind of that color in general. Now inherently this kind of looks like blackface, and that's a problem. So you would want to try and replace it back to something maybe just pure white or something more neutral. Also take note that the pink tiles in the back of this scene are also being cut in that same similarity comparison, and every icon here is being cut out Then also all the orange in the white and orange lines on this screen have been cut out. So there would be just an infinite amount of fiddling, and I think a big part of that is where it would become an issue, certainly. But because this is just a color filter, you do have this case where as the video's moving, you're not going to have to go in there and statically add a filter, which that is kind of the problem that you're going to run into otherwise, is that you are just going to constantly have to put in a blur or filter. And at that point, if I'm doing a 60 to 200 hour coverage of some adult video game, and I have to constantly just constantly turn that that blur on and off, or go in post production and turn the blur on and off, it's just not something that's gonna really happen. It's just not reasonable. So yeah, I might make some more effort and attempts to
All the magic I need.
work towards something like that. Like ideally, you would take that general idea of taking a color, and here we are with it back. Ideally, you would take the general idea of filtering out a color, focus more kind of on nipples and genitalia, and then chroma key it so that then you could overlay a like too hot for YouTube or censored image directly. And we've seen, say, I've seen a YouTuber that definitely covers adult mods for, or at least he used to cover adult mods for Skyrim, and he would do that, and he was doing it definitely the hard way. There was a lot of post-production in his videos, and honestly his channel was just constantly getting warnings from YouTube anyways with it, because of just the entire nature of it. That being said, I was able to do Honey Pop. That being said, Honey Pop only has like 6 adult scenes, so that might also help you a lot as long as there isn't a lot of nudity. However, if you were going to play, say, Lust for Darkness or that game, there's something like in every shot that there's an adult sex toy in every shot for that, so I don't know how you really cover that at all. Even if you do age-gate it. And I definitely saw another YouTuber try to go that route, and it not really working, getting shot down. So, like, I think I'd have to be very, very creative to balance out the desire of an audience who may want to see that content, and the desire of a creator who wants to cover those types of games, and the desire of YouTube to just kind of utterly punish anybody that try to make any content like that. Inherently, I think what you probably would cross your fingers is just hope that at one point YouTube changes. YouTube either gets desperate and allows adult content, or YouTube realizes that they're leaving money on the table, and as such they decide to have a adult verified section on YouTube. Particularly as YouTube is getting just more and more pressure and being forced more and more to actively have age verification and better, more accurate age verification elements to its to its content. And alright, well, I guess I do this. And then
I am such
this
a
and
genius.
this and then that. That was an easy decision. I don't know why it took me that long. So yeah, that's something I'm thinking of. As for the actual game, Love Dating here, we know it's kind of nothing, even though it's very positively reviewed. It is just a physics-looking game, and so I imagine the adult content must be good. It's also $1.69 in English and Chinese, and that inherently also it probably doesn't even actually show much nudity, if at all.
Nope, not today.
Of course, even with the web peak,
Seems to be over.
there's problems, to say the least, as far as whether something should be blurred or not. I could certainly expand my web peak region so that you got, say, 3/4 of the way to the second screen on the right, and then it showed a blurred version, and then if I went all the way to the right, it would show the non-blurred version. That would be a very natural progression, but easy to mess up if you drop the mouse and it just goes all the way to the right, which that's happened a couple times. Here we have a TechRaptor article. The story of Season's mobile game is going to be revealed next month. For anybody interested. We're doing fairly well here. Here we have a game on Steam called Trash Quest. We'll actually just start going through some of these games. We may have already talked about this. Looks like it's just a platformer. I don't really like the color palette. $2.54, third-party EULA, English only. Next we have a game called Just Get Through the Door. $9.99, English only. It seems to just be kind of an asset flip game. Maybe we're playing around with physics and crazy elements. That's probably not too bad. At a certain point, it really just beckons the question. See, I don't know why my internet is doing worse now. I upgraded my router software, which I know I normally shouldn't do, but in this case I think it's fairly justified because I've been having a lot of issues still. And I'm hoping it's just a driver issue, and installing new firmware will fix it. Maybe it has. I haven't seen any problems lately. Although I also changed the rekeying interval on the Wi-Fi, and that might have been the issue too. But yeah, the little tweaks I've made now makes it feel like I'm dropping a few frames, and the quality of service may be worse now, but I may have to just kind of live with that, and it may not really matter that much. Somebody could jump on the chat and tell me if it's really, really bad.
I'll get production up and running.
Let's see.
I get the gist of it.
Yeah, I think theoretically though, you would just want some kind of animation that could play over and over again on top of the footage. And instead,
Tomorrow's water pressure.
here we have a game called G Mode, which looks like a NES game or Game Boy game or cell phone game that's been converted. Looks Chinese, $4.49, Japanese. Oh, I was wrong. Looks like a cell phone RPG Maker game. Maybe that's what it was originally, was a cell phone game. Inherently, you would have thought there would have been more of those. That would have people would have loved and wanted to play more of. But
I get the gist of it.
I don't think actually most of the
Get the gist of it.
cell phone games were good enough for anybody to care about them. Let's go ahead and end the turn there. Next we have a game on Steam called Pog, which looks like nothing, for $1.19. Since it's Wednesday, we don't really want to leave anything for Friday, so we should try to burn through the news as fast as possible. Do we want this? Or do we want to do this? I think we want to get rid of all this.
Pigs, where are you?
And then evolve this.
Coming at you.
The design fault lies with you.
And hit that.
Well, on to
And
the
then
next
end the
project.
turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Slow and Steady, which
Designs are like unhatched
looks like it's a tortoise versus the hare type race idea, but
Such a good guinea
in all
pig.
actuality it's just probably some really dumb joke game. It's free, English full audio, arguably not the slowest game in the world. I'm not sure if you compared it to like Desert Bus, if that isn't actually still the slowest game in the world. And inherently there must be something that's even slower. Let's see. Paradigm shifts. And paradigm shifts. Draw more cards. This deck just gives you so many cards, and I think that's what lets people win on this is, and this might be the strategy for Shadowverse in general, is just have really good decks that let you always have cards in your hand to play while your opponent burns out all of their options.
It's all the same to me.
Let's see. Go ahead and play that. And pretty much don't bother to play anything else.
Now the fight begins.
Well, that's too bad.
And in the turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Destroy the Dummies, which, yeah, it doesn't seem like anything. The other issue, it's $8.99 English full audio, third party EULA. The other issue certainly though is if I was to try and cover some of these adult games, the audio and the dialogue and the conversation and your criticism of the game itself, arguably, well, you would have to argue with YouTube, frankly, as to whether that in itself is the is not family friendly enough for their content. Or I mean, I'm not even talking about actually trying to run ads on that footage, just allow it to exist. The little scrap of being allowed to exist as a piece of art.
Did I predict wrong?
Let's go ahead and play one of these. And then in the turn. Next we have a game on Steam here called Stormburst, which looks to me like it's probably a Bomberman clone. Not particularly interesting. 59 cents, English only. Here we have a game called Opa Definitive Edition, which looks like just MS Paint drawing graphics of some kind of obstacle game is what it's described as. $2.99, English only. Let's see. Summon 2 of these. And smack, 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 and smack. Here we have a game on Steam called Garden Magic, which is clearly a cell phone game port for 74 cents. That's an odd price, too.
Designs are like unhatched dragon eggs.
See, and once again, I just woke up and I'm already a little sleepy. I guess if I oversleep, then that probably is an indication of poor sleep, and then that's an indication that I'll be a little sleepy even when I just wake up.
No one else I'd rather lose to.
I'm playing ranked, right? I am moving up in the ranks. Wow, and I just kind of, I think, got everything. I went up a rank level in the battle pass. Now I went up 2 battle pass levels. Interesting. How can you jump up 2 like that? So do we have any missions at all? Yeah, 2 more victories and we'll be done today. Wow. I have no way to adjust for that at all. Like, we've got so much news. It really wouldn't make any sense for me to just stop playing. So I'm just going to have to play, and I'm just going to have to start winning and getting the daily quests done earlier and earlier. And I think that's fine. I think that works perfectly well. Here we have a game called Prison Show. We had another game that seemed very similar to this, just asset flippy. You've got to escape. This is $8.74 English full audio. It doesn't look good. The one we saw a week ago looked better. Here we have a game called Calculate It, which you can almost certainly ignore. Early access at $129 with a third-party EULA, English only, no reason. Not really a good reason for it to be English only. When it is a calculator type game. Here, Tech Raptor has an opinion piece what we hope to see in the Knights of the Old Republic remake. If you're interested in looking at that, that's kind of a hype article about kind of nothing. Let's see. Select that. Tech Raptor has an article here. Genshin Impact developer MiHoYo was allegedly attacked by a knife-wielding man. So yeah, I heard about this.
Smells like this
It is sometimes getting crazier and crazier as far as the fandom and crazy people. I think there's a lot of crazy people all around the world, and it is very common for people in America to highlight and talk about the crazy people outside of America, and there's just kind of this xenophobia that exists amongst news reporters and who are the people deciding to report on certain news. Because kind of in this about the same time frame in the past week, there's been two dementia rattled women who have been assaulted by police, and neither one of those stories really blew up and got talked about. And almost certainly on a daily basis in the United States, there's somebody that attacks somebody with a knife. There was a teenager slash young adult that was attacking someone with a knife in a fight, and the police showed up and immediately shot her, which that's brought about some controversy or differing opinions on that one, because at least in that scenario I can see some people's sides when saying that was a reasonable use of deadly force, because she was, from what it looked like on the video, very, very close to potentially murdering someone else in a fight. But it's hard to side with the police on anything these days. So I can also see the thought that it was potentially just a shoot first and ask questions later scenario. And you can always make the claim that in that kind of scenario, the police should have had more options, non-lethal options, been better trained. But anyways, to get back to video game news, apparently there was this like Bunny Girl event, and these Bunny Girl events were announced, and then Genshin Impact, I think, is in part funded by Tencent, thus controlled by the Chinese government. And so then these like Playboy Bunny outfits were de-announced, as they were canceled, as they were out of character and inappropriate. And so that's what got the crazy person irate, is the censorship there. And I can see the idea of being upset if you feel like a game you might be very interested in. This is also from Honkai Third Impact, which is also the same company, developer. So yeah, I can understand being irate. I can't agree with or understand attacking someone because of it. Just stop giving them your business and realize you perhaps should be a little bit more careful with who you give your money to, or in the future.
Impossible.
But yeah, I imagine it's a lot like the Kyoto fire attacks, and I imagine we will just hear more stories like that as people are increasingly going crazy for any number of reasons. And it does make a spooky scenario potentially, where we may hit a world like Mad Max, not because of one major triggering factor. Like Mad Max, I think that universe pretty much only existed because of gas wars and running out of oil. So that might be a contributing factor, but I wouldn't be surprised if scenarios just get parts of the world just get more violent and more crazy in general. We've seen it happen before. A lot of African countries just have became brutally violent amongst regime changes, and a lot of ancient Middle Eastern countries became brutally violent, and
Gizmos like
people
this every millennium.
shift from one religion to another religion, which arguably could be considered a form of craziness in ancient times.
Gizmos like this
Uh,
every millennium.
I'll get production up and running.
So yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for that. To potentially happen, although there is also a lot of room for the opposite to happen, and maybe we are on the verge of the safest times ever. There also, it's also easy to forget that the ages of duels, both by sword and gun, are not thousands of years old. So in the in a few hundred years ago, it wouldn't be crazy for somebody to
Impossible.
outwardly challenge somebody they were upset with to a duel, and I could see even in Japan the idea of several 100 years ago somebody challenging the creator and artist to a duel because they didn't like it. Now there is a bigger argument certainly to make about how Japanese people have been sold this line of understanding that has left them to really believe what they've been sold, as far as they own the idol, they own the characters. It is not an artist's creations for them to do whatever they want to. It belongs to the fans, it belongs to the fanatics. And that's an interesting argument to make, but I don't know if most people would really be willing to agree to that idea, that all art belongs to the fandom and not the creator. At a certain point, it does go into like the public domain and ownership shifts over, so I kind of do agree with that idea, but I don't think that's an instant transference. As soon as you tell a story, it belongs to all of society. And maybe there's definitely healthier ways to implement that idea. Like you could make the argument that there shouldn't be any copyright, and as soon as you tell a story, it belongs to all society. But then the response to that should be, well, if you don't like that I didn't make a bunny girl event for this game, why don't you make a bunny girl event for this game? It's open source because it belongs to all society at that point. You could program that. But it is also just a great example of don't make promises you can't keep ever, because people get upset with that. Usually they don't try and stab you. Anyways, I need to hurry up through the news if I'm gonna win as much as I think I am. Here we have an RPG Maker game called Imperium for 74 cents. English only, nothing there of interest. Here we have a game on Steam called Shadow Step, which looks like it's just some asset flip stuff. $1.69, English only. Yeah, I may seriously have to start considering curating content. Let's see.
Did I overreach myself?
This is grave.
Darn it, lost. But not terribly. Here we have a game called Super Huey 1-2 Airdrop. This feels like this was an old game being resold, but also looks like garbage, so whatever. $6.69, English only. I don't recognize Big Boat Interactive. Maybe I recognize them, but I do think I recognize Ziggurat as a publisher. So let's see. Ziggurat is a big publisher, mostly of older games. most of which not so interesting. Although I could see like maybe like Bad Dudes. Is that on the fall list? Yes, it is. Some of these old Data East games. It does seem like it shifts back and forth as far as just how easily could you own a significant percentage of the old games that existed for like the NES, Super NES, those old retro games that you still will almost certainly be better off finding a collection of ROMs to put on like a RetroPie than to individually try and build yourself your own curation from Steam versions of the files, which arguably may not actually be the original ROMs, or they may be encrypted in such a way that it's not worth it to try and de-encrypt them back to a ROM, a standard ROM. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Online Retro Tennis, which is just Pong. And with the exception of it maybe being online, there's nothing there. $2.69, single player online PvP, English only. Not winning as much as I've lost like twice in a row, but I shouldn't complain yet. See, TechRaptor has Ghost and Ghouls Resurrection coming to PC, PlayStation, and Xbox this summer. We may have already talked about that. Also coming is Capcom Arcade Stadium, getting more games and extra content. Let's see. It does have a Steam link already for June 1st. The thing about this game is I was hoping that it would be easier and actually playable all the way to the end. And I don't know if I think they did that. I think they doubled down on it being known as a difficult game, and thus they wanted to stick to that feeling and not make it easier or throw in an easy mode. TechRaptor also has an article here. Midnight Club Los Angeles has mysteriously returned to the Xbox Marketplace. Which, okay. That's... They make that out like that's a big mystery, but really it's just... Yeah, some kind of contract got renegotiated. Somebody... probably two interns at two different companies sat down and negotiated something because nobody else cared about it that much. Or two intern lawyers sat down and negotiated something. Here we have a game on Steam, Slime Dungeon Escape, which looks like ASCII art. Hideous. 84 cents, English only.
No smile today.
Okay. So we can go ahead and hit that. And that. And that.
Get the gist of it. What has
Huh? I thought this guy... Why did this guy not disappear? Oh, it ends at the end of your opponent's turn. Here we have a game called Cyberpunk 2090, which looks like an asset flip joke game. A clone game of Cyberpunk 2077. $3.99 English and Russian. Yep, nothing there. Do that, and then...
You'll find gizmos like this every millennium.
And then do that,
I'll get production up and running.
and then...
Coming at you.
Just go ahead and evolve somebody, even though that probably is the wrong evolve.
Watch this. Watch this.
Why would I laugh?
So,
Hmm.
you refuse to listen.
Here we have a game on Steam called Simona's Requiem, which actually looks like it might be something. Not really sure I trust it, but I did want to also mention that I did all of the. I'm still playing Destiny Child, probably the best gacha adult game to exist on an Android cell phone. And with every new expansion, there's bits of story moving forward. And for this season 3 single player story, they seem to be shifting into a very wild direction in which the main character you're playing as is going to be revealed as the true Destiny Child, as one would assume he always was, but we didn't know what that meant, and we still don't really know what that means, and that inherently is going to mean that he's going to actually start being serious and taking the tournament fight seriously and actually trying to beat the main bad guy characters who are kind of just now several years into the game, into the global version of the game. They're just kind of now getting revealed. So yeah, they're stepping up and taking it to the extreme, and it's very interesting, to say the least. And it is saying a massive amount that a gacha game that plays itself is interesting. But there is potentially an implication, since the main character you're playing as is getting serious. There's also an implication that several of the main characters, several of the main assistant succubus characters, all of them, may be removed from the story completely. They may have been destroyed or killed or whatever, and that would certainly go in a very different direction. And for a game that's been going this long, it might make sense, frankly, to eliminate some characters. For instance, Davy as a character, this little kid succubus, that basically just called the main character a stupid rooster head the whole time, and it was just, that was just kind of like the annoying little sister trope for that character over and over again, and that same dynamic over and over again. And I don't feel like that dynamic probably would have ever been able to have been I don't know if that ever would have been able to change that dynamic.
I do believe we have a case.
Okay.
You smell suspicious.
What was I?
And then, like, the other two characters really weren't doing anything other than helping the main character be lazy and not really work towards a final goal. So eliminating them might have moved the story around quite a bit. And what was kind of shocking, not shocking, is that up until this point, the main character you play as has only been referred to as Master, because he's like the master of these fictional characters that he's creating magically, and he's a demon too, so using master/slave type terminology would be in line with demons, although they never say slave, and none of the characters are really treated like slaves per se. Some of the other childs, is what they're called, are treated like assistants, sometimes badly by bad guys.
So, you refuse to listen.
I do
And
believe
at the end of the story uh, mode, they reveal that the main character, who up until this point has only been called Master, now remembers his name and actually does have a name. And potentially, depending how you interpret it, it might be a case that the events of the first 2 seasons were nothing but a coma dream in totality.
This is great.
So there's a lot of different ways that Destiny Child could go, and that's fairly exciting. Very exciting to be able to make what is just a general update to a story interesting. Whereas if we're gonna just compare it to Shadowverse here, like Shadowverse tries to do that exact same thing with its single player storyline, and it totally does not work. Shadowverse kind of drops the idea of having its own storyline characters, though, by instead being greedy and doing crossover events. And we see that in a lot of games, whereas Destiny Child has had 3 crossover events. Nobody liked them, and I don't think they would ever do another crossover event. And arguably, they wouldn't have ever done the crossover events in the first place if it weren't for them partnering with another company. So, like, in comparison, right now we have this Entropy's Abyss, and I've done the fights, but I haven't looked at the story here. I really don't care one bit what the story even is until I have all 4 of these characters unlocked, and probably the 4 characters for the next chapter unlocked. And honestly, I only really care if Entropy's Abyss and the next chapter come back together and explain some of the Fate's Trigger conclusion, or solidify the idea that the fairy character in the main story, who's been in the main story and the number 1 character all the way from the prologue, is actually completely dead. And if that is the twist, good, but it's still not as impactful as Destiny Child's story, because killing off 1 character doesn't really kill off that many characters in Shadowverse. It's still very, very easy to move a story forward just around all the other characters that would exist. Let's go back to Haven Tournament, since we're just looking for victories. To get back to this game, though, Simona's Requiem, after watching it for a while, part of the problem with it is just that you're not really doing much with the gameplay mechanic. You're kind of just platforming, and on rare occasion you're swinging the scythe, and it doesn't just seem like it has enough variety in your gameplay. Feels kind of like a 1-button game or 2-button game. $6.79 English full audio. I'm gonna just go ahead and skip it. Or put it on the fall list. You know what? Put it on the fall list. And I'm too generous, but yeah, put it on the fall list. Let other people review it badly first, then skip it. This isn't video game related, but apparently a Warhammer Fest 2021 online has been announced, according to TechRaptor. TechRaptor also has a review for Insurmountable, which looks like a climbing game. Is this actually on Steam? Yeah, I feel like we had seen this. Hidden gem of a game, one that provides the right mix of challenge for the player's delight. Solid challenges based on its premise, awkward visual aesthetics and minimalistic music, great use of risk-reward system, maybe too random at times, decent replay value, more tactical than it looks. One of the things, there's no link to Steam here for this game, unfortunately. One of the things that did surprise me is how much Mustang as a pinball table had. It had like 5 to 8 different licensed songs that the table would play, when nearly no other table
Gems guide you.
has even one full song, or it has maybe one full song and then it's been redone for the terrible audio systems that a lot of the old pinball tables had. One of the things I learned was that many pinball tables would have 2 holes for speakers, and one was the speaker and one was actually just a tweeter, so it wasn't actually stereo. It just looked like it would be. So that there's a decent chance that I'm gonna try and upload one of those videos and it's gonna have the music playing and content ID claimed. Hopefully that's as far as it goes. But yeah, most tables, even like the Ghostbusters table, has just one Ghostbuster song that I could recognize, and the Doctor Who Master of Time table literally didn't even have the Doctor Who theme music, and so it sounded awful because of that.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
So yeah, pinball music is a little bit hard to work with because you have to be able to get the music to fade in and fade out and be ready to jump to a different sound effect if something like a multi-ball mode or a different game mode starts. But a lot of tables just wouldn't have had the ROM chips to have music in them. They could never put a record player or a CD player inside of a pinball machine. There's just too much vibration going on there. So it would have had to have been an MP3 player type era expansion, and they seem to never really embrace that either before 1999, and pinball pretty much died. And Stern just feels cheap in a lot of its designs, just intentionally creating devices to rip off rich people. And I think in a lot of cases the pinball collectors of the world might be better off if they grew a spine and kind of refused to buy some tables until they were better quality. But also then that would probably be the death of pinball. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Grounded update 0.9 has added curved building pieces, which I think this is more interesting in the fact that Grounded is still getting updates and nobody is even talking about Grounded as a game. That was a very hyped game and then just stopped being hyped as soon as people could actually play it. Here we have a game on Steam called Slaughterhouse, which you're apparently playing as a bull with a gun, which that's at least slightly interesting as a joke idea, but honestly it still just looks like an asset flip first person shooter. Free to play, English only, single player only. Almost feels like this is something PETA would make, which that might actually endear some people to PETA more if they were able to pull off something like that.
You're in good hands.
Yeah. Next we have a game on Steam called Bloody Paws Passion Unleashed. I'm not sure I talked about the pinball table called Golden Champion, I believe is the name of the table, where it has like a punching bag in the center of the table, and the punching bag then spins around, and then there is a mechanical boxer that you fight in the pinball table. It's a very crazy design. It's not a good pinball table though, unfortunately. Like, there's a jump rope section, which is an interesting gimmick, but it doesn't really work. And then there's a speed bag section, which works fairly well, but then there's just a lot of shots in the center that end up hitting the punching bag and then not going anywhere. So you really don't combo into that next shot, so it just breaks the game flow. As for this game, Bloody Paws, as I'm looking at it, a beat-up game where you play as a werewolf. It's not the worst idea ever. It's $4.99. I'll put it on the fall list. Early access. It probably isn't much of anything, but if we did this, could we do something twice? I think you want to do this.
I will rise.
And then do this. And then check that.
Oh, come on!
Next, we have a game on Steam called Archer, The Legend of Ohm, which seems to be like a card game. Player versus player with some kind of simplistic animation style, low polygon animation style. $2.99, third party account, and online PvP only, English, Spanish. I almost want to call this like a cardboard cutout stop animation style. That's what it kind of feels like. Next, we have a visual novel called Pandemic Love, which is pencil sketch, black and white. I'm not sure I can really call this an art style and wouldn't just describe this as just bad drawing.
Mankind's hatred is a curse.
But yeah, I don't think there's anything interesting there. It's free, which is far too cheap for a visual novel. English only. And usually if it's free, then it comes with something else that's annoying in the story, I'm sure. Hasbro has reported positive growth for Q1 of 2021, which that may have more to do with board games than video games, so that probably wasn't video game news worth mentioning. A game called Dark Envoy delivers a RPG with a deadly duo in 2022, which, okay, this might be the next big Diablo-like game, which I do kind of feel like I am gonna fairly quickly get pushed into the idea of playing some Diablo-esque game. Right.
Prominence.
Ow!
Well, do we have any reason not to just evolve and do more damage now?
All the magic is that how you treat a lady? Ow!
So like next turn they lose. Gamasutra Multiverse has raised $17.5 million for a video game inspired digital tabletop play platform. I think we saw this game and I wasn't particularly that impressed. Gamasutra also has a Counter-Strike Go streamer wins a lawsuit against Twitch but remains banned from the platform. This is interesting. James Phantom Lord Varga has won a lawsuit against Twitch in a legal battle that's lasted 3 years. However, Twitch claims the victory was the result of a procedural error on its part and that Varga will be prevented from returning on to the platform. Yeah, well, we'll see how the judge reacts to maybe Twitch not following the law. But also that feels like exactly what Twitch would do. It's just like, nah, we're not going to follow a judgment. He claims Twitch broke his contract with him by never issuing an explanation as to why the channel was removed, breaching an agreement the pair signed in 2015. So he had a very specific legal contract, probably different than just a terms of service. Varga was banned and his channel was removed after he allegedly failed to disclose business ties to a Counter-Strike Go gambling site. Ah, that's why I recognize his name, which he promoted during his streams on Twitch. He also received warnings from Twitch for violating his policy against sexually suggestive content, content involving self-harm, and content involving racist symbols. So Phantom Lord doesn't seem like he is much of a good guy as far as streamers, but yeah, there's a lot of edgy streamers out there that Twitch does not want on their platform. The company has since, quote, established clearer and more consistent processes for suspensions and account terminations. In all fairness to Twitch, as much as they are a mess and a kind of garbage run company, at the very least, I will say there aren't too many instances that we've heard of random bannings on Twitch. Like, Twitch has gone the complete opposite direction and allowed a lot of characters, a lot of Twitch thoughts in particular, to stay on their platform and not ban them. But there have been some pretty public breakups / bannings of big streamers too on Twitch.
A dazzling victory awaits.
Here we have a game on Steam called Dirty Blood, which looks like a dark first-person shooter, but it might be just slightly polished enough to give it a follow. Might be a VR game too. $9.99 English single player. No, there's like 2 normal enemies and two boss fights, and that's it. So this is just not enough of a game to justify $9.99, definitely. Next we have Alchemist Adventures Prologue, which looks like a JRPG, which would be kind of hard to decide to play this game compared to like the Atelier games. So, Alchemist Adventure. Why it's putting out a demo so late, I don't know. I guess it's because the main game is still in early access. That is an interesting thought, certainly, as to... yeah, this game doesn't look terrible, by any means. I guess the question would be... when, if your game is in early access, is the appropriate time to release a demo? Do you release it right at the beginning of an early access period? Or do you release it somewhere in the middle of an early access period? Or do you release it right as you're about to release the full game, or right before you release the full game? I would think you'd do it right before you release the full game. Otherwise, whatever demo you're putting out is not really accurate to what the final product is going to be. Yeah. So, unless Alchemist Adventure came out fairly soon, I assume the prologue demo would be pretty bad. And it also kind of highlights the idea that it's not really in early access mode as a game. It's actually just in a bug fixing. We don't want to be criticized as if we were a finished product mode. Next we have a game on Steam called Heaven vs. Hell, which looks like it's just an RPG game with a limited number of angels and demons fighting each other, which seems like that would be really boring. $4.49 English and Russian. We might be on the verge of seeing religious pandering happening around Russian low effort games. That would be something different.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Let's go ahead and hit that. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article that interests me, obviously. Valve has quietly been changing the rules for adult games on Steam, which we kind of have been seeing this, but it's been a very slow process. It feels like a very natural process. I don't think I can make a claim that I think Valve had intentionally, secretly planned all along to allow adult games on their storefront and then close the gate behind on some games and start pushing like a censorship message or anything like that. If anything, I think Valve is probably one of the most honest storefronts in the sense that it is just saying, we don't want you to censor your games. We don't care about that one bit. We just have the games we want and the games we don't. And if your game is one of the games we don't, we're not asking you to censor so much as just sell it somewhere else. Now, inherently, how much does that really change the censorship argument? Probably not much at all, because still, if you want to be on this giant playfield of Valve storefront, you are going to have to censor and accommodate their requirements. And so they're de facto pushing for censorship, even if they're trying not to push for censorship, which is an kind of unfair catch-22, but also exactly the scenario. Go and heal. And do we want to evolve anything? I don't think so. So here the article goes, it's always been a tricky proposition publishing an adult game on Steam, and they're focusing on Super Seducer 3, which in all fairness, I just think Super Seducer 3, the person in charge of making the Super Seducers series is just not good, or a good businessman, or good at telling the truth a lot of times. So yeah, it may very well have been a years-long, decades-long stance that Steam does not publish explicit images of real people. We would have to think, is there actually a game on Steam that would violate that claim? And I don't think there is a game that would violate that claim. The number of games that would even potentially be able to violate that game would be like BMX XXX, the guy game, which is illegal to sell, I think. Maybe there's some kind of old poker game that has some live action full motion video in it, but the numbers are less than a dozen in total as far as adult games. Even when you look at Nutaku and adult games in general on porn sites, that they are almost always animated and not real people. And maybe at some point we'll have VR pointed, like first-person perspective porn exist, and that's not so much an interactive game, but that too, even in Valve's push for VR, has not been allowed on the Valve storefront. So I think Valve has been fairly consistent there to cut them some slack. So does this article go anywhere else as far as Super Seducer? Okay.
Mother, father, come on.
There are two sets of published rules and guidelines for things that shouldn't be published on Steam. Here are the two versions that are live. What you shouldn't publish on Steam is adult content that isn't appropriately labeled and age-gated, libelous or defamatory statements, content you don't own or have adequate rights to, content that violates the laws of any jurisdiction in which it will be available, which means you can't list it to be available in like the Middle East, for instance, some of those Middle Eastern countries. Arguably, some of those countries, though, with hyper restrictive laws around the world, also don't even have Steam listed. And that doesn't really save you much, because if you post something that China doesn't like, they will come over to the American Steam and the worldwide Steam, even though there is a specific Steam just for China, and review bomb things. Content that exploits children in any ways. Now, I think there are definitely some games where a child is exploited in some small, simplistic way that they are not really thinking about in that case, and they're not really talking about in that case. They mean they mean you're like sexually exploiting a child. They don't mean that you're tricking them to give you a Pokemon card for $1 that's worth $50 or something like that, or you're tricking a child into doing your homework or mowing the grass or something like that, which almost certainly there are games where you pull off something like that as a joke scene. But yeah, I know what they're talking about, and maybe they need to be more explicit, but whatever. Let's go ahead and I guess we'll do that.
You in need of medicine?
And then hit that.
Come on!
Applications that modify customers' computer in an unexpected or harmful way, such as malware or viruses, or applications that fraudulently attempt to gather sensitive information, such as Steam credentials and financial data, which Steam handles all of that. And then you have the second list that somebody is clearly they could just merge these two lists, which this immediately, there's no hate speech claim on this list, so I feel like this list was made by more of an SJW person, and inherently this highlights a problem with Steam in which there's just nobody really in charge of anything until secretly somebody turns out to be in charge of something, or decides that they're in charge of something, and that's why Steam can't make Half-Life 3 in a nutshell. So, like, hate speech, i.e. speech that promotes hatred, violence, or discrimination against groups of people based on ethnicity, religion, gender, age, disability, or sexual orientation. Which, yeah, generally that sounds alright, but then this is already covered with libelous and defamatory statements, and when you give this special label and this special punishment attached to hate speech, it then becomes very easy for an overzealous prosecutor, whether in the actual legal sense or in just the sense of the people who may be in charge of determining whether a game gets on Steam. It's easy to claim that something contains hate speech when it is really just criticizing something. Or maybe there's just libelous and defamatory statements. So you would almost, I personally, as a free speech advocate, don't like the use of the phrase hate speech because it kind of means nothing, and libelous and defamatory I think covers it fine. So you'd almost hope that this is the new list and they've just kind of watered it down. That being said, here you can see as number 2, sexually explicit images of real people, which I'm almost certain I have seen some slide puzzles of boudoir images of real people, so they may be secretly going back and
The dead need a living wage.
and disallowing or removing some old games based on that criteria, or they may need to go back and disallow some old games because, yeah.
Priced souls.
But honestly, they should have just said they no to Super Seducer because we just don't want to do business with them. That's the truth of the matter. You don't need to explain. There's a saying in politics, and I am growing to agree with it more and more, that if you're explaining, you're losing, and you should just say no. Nope, I'm not going to explain. I said no. I mean, it is the thing that every kid hates to hear from their parents, and it's like, why? And sure, the kids can be annoying asking why, but there are totally a bunch of parents out there that just go because I said so, and that is sadly kind of the effective way to deal with adults, as much as it is to deal with kids.
An apology.
Like, you don't want to get dug into the mud arguing something.
Let's play.
And it is fair to just say, hey, this is my business and I've made a decision and it's final. Let's see. Then they, if these are numbered, when honestly they probably shouldn't be numbered, because it kind of makes it feel like our number one concern here is hate speech. But I bet they probably don't mean it that way. Sexually explicit images of real people, adult content that is inappropriately labeled as age-gated, libelous, content you don't own or have the adequate rights to, content that violates the laws of the jurisdiction which will be available, content that is patently offensive or intended to shock or disgust viewers, which there might be some laws around why that would be disallowed. There is arguably some obscenity laws in some countries and some parts of the United States that still exist that claim something that is patently offensive or intended to shock or disgust viewers is not considered art and thus not protected under the First Amendment. I'm fairly certain if anybody took that to the court, in the Supreme Court, it would get knocked down immediately. But there was several years ago, like the, what was it, Piss Jesus, that was shown in the like New York museum, one of the New York museums, and they tried to get rid of it on obscenity laws, and I don't think they won on that argument.
You're too strong.
Let's see. Then number 8 is content that exploits children in any way. What's funny is like Ni no Kuni would probably be a game where you exploited children. Somebody is exploiting the child to be the hero and save the day. And that Balan Wonderland is probably a game that you could claim is exploiting children, because the main good guy is exploiting a child to save the day and be the hero. Like almost every child game where there's a child hero, they're getting exploited in one way or another for some work. Anyways, applications that modify the computers in unexpected or harmful ways, such as malware or viruses, applications that fraudulently attempt to gather sensitive information, such as Steam credentials and financial data, video content not directly related to a product that has shipped on Steam, and non-interactive 360 VR videos, which, so that they really have kind of expanded this. Apparently, this is from the onboarding page. This is from joining the Steam Warp's distribution program, which clearly there's two people that wrote that list, and they kind of were on the same page, but they kind of weren't. And see, even here, TechRaptor goes, inconsistent documentation isn't exactly new in the corporate world. Let's see.
Activate. Enhance.
fire. This one's for my family.
Let's see. What's interesting here is it looks like they're banning pornography in general, which is interesting, but at certain points you might argue pornography as defined by the law is not actually pornography as defined. Porn video games may not technically legally be considered pornography because they're interactive and thus take on a more creative artistic nature. But you can see here that in 2020 pornography in general was banned, and then in 2021 it was adult content following US Code 2257, and then they've just now changed that down to sexually explicit images of real images. And see, the problem here, you can see where their problem came from, is that you have one line of thinking where they just want to ban pornography. You have one line of thinking where they want to ban real world pornography, and then the middle ground you have kind of, let's open the gates a little bit, but we don't want to have to actually require age verification of the actual human being, which I assume means the person in the video, not so much the person buying the content. But they really don't want to do either. Unfortunately, they're almost certainly going to be required to age gate and age verify every single customer. You're going to have to either put in a credit card with your name, or even send in some kind of credentials. But yeah, this article is definitely very focused around Super Seducer 3, and I don't feel like the rules have been slowly changing as much as this title implies. It's been evolving and trying. It was much more of an inconsistent mess before, where some anime games were being allowed and some weren't, and why one anime game was being allowed versus another was not being explained well, or you were just not getting any explanation, and there was a lot of pushback. Even that kind of pushback has pretty much died off, and a lot of it seemed to come from Manga Gamer, which really eventually just made it look like Manga Gamer was misunderstanding intentionally the rules, or trying to put a lot of content that went too far for Steam's taste. They definitely did go a little wild, saying that an entire art style of young-looking characters was not allowed, even in a game that literally had no adult content in it.
No smile today.
And certainly that one could not be justified by any logic, but that was the biggest issue, certainly. And then they were fairly crazy at a certain point, where they were early on, where they were saying any game that had any anime girl in any school uniform to them meant they were underage, completely misunderstanding that, well, that's pretty much all the games, and even children, even teenagers over the age of 18 in Japan would potentially be wearing a school uniform, a college uniform type equivalent. And then they never really got into the whole age of consent being lower in different countries. So, like, it is worth mentioning that the age of consent in America is technically 16, not 18. It's just that most state age of consent laws raise that number up to 18.
Fresh manna melons and ocean fruit.
I get the gist.
And even at that, there's even more confusing issues that they confuse the issue because it can be 16 in some states with parental consent. And that there are some arguments around pregnant teenagers being allowed to marry before they give birth to their child, and thus the reason why you might allow for marriage to happen earlier, and thus inherently the laws then push the age of consent back to have sex earlier.
Fruit flies.
That's not really a good argument, but I think that's the reason why some of the age of consent laws are earlier. Can we...
Finish the job.
Can we save the day here?
It's the small things in life.
Moving on, we have a TechRaptor article. First big Everspace 2 update brings a new companion and more. Which, okay, if you're interested in Everspace 2, check that out. Hood Outlaws and Legends roadmap for year 1 has been revealed. Which, that game actually needs to come out and be good before I think anybody should care about its roadmap. Let's see, Gamma Sutra has the latest iPhone update, brings tighter privacy rules for iOS as far as in-app advertising, keeping it all in-house, I'm sure, for Apple, and probably trying to cut out
Uncharted desert awaits.
Google. Gametsu has the Japanese trademarks Shin Chronicled by Sega, Contra Shattered Soldier by Konami, and more. Which, Shin, I think in Japanese, is the word for God, like Shin Godzilla. So these might be like ultimate versions of these games. Or I could be totally wrong about that. Alright. Okay. This. And this. And this.
Farewell.
Well, that didn't play out exactly how I had hoped it to play out, but whatever. That did save me a little bit. A psychological thriller visual novel called Corpse Factory for Switch and PC launches January 2022. This, I doubt, is part of the Corpse Party series, if I was to guess. Almost would be interesting if it was part of the Corpse Party series, because then it would allow for kind of a reboot of that series, which is what it really needs to do. Although arguably you can't really reboot the Corpse Party series without running into the same problem you've already run into, which is you've rebooted the Corpse Party series too often. Let's do this. And then this.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Evolve here.
Coming at you.
The design fault lies with you.
That.
Never fear, your hypersonic gal is here.
That.
I
Hit
Such
that.
a genius.
Best of luck to you.
Here we have a game on Steam called Retrograde, which looks like a first-person shooter.
You follow behind.
Early access, $29.99. Single player,
Uncharted Desert Awaits.
English online PvP. Also, I'll put it on the fall list just in case, but it looks polished to a small amount. But I don't suspect that this is going to be a game people really get into. It's not from a main developer or publisher or anything. Let's see, and then here we have a game called Railway to Dream, which apparently is a word game, text-based game. From the looks of it, to me it looks like it's a visual novel, Chinese game. English not supported, $6.99, Chinese only, yeah. Okay, well... let's see. This... oh, screwed up.
You'll find gizmos like this every millennium.
Now the fight begins.
I am the acme of G. Watch this. No, the blueprint.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna win here. Let's see. A golden Wii that was created for the Queen is up for sale, which I'm not sure what happens to gifts given to the Queen, but apparently they eventually get sold. It was originally made to be given to the Queen Elizabeth to promote the latest THQ line of mini-game collections. Unfortunately, it never made its way to the Queen due to strict policies on what can be sent to her, so the Wii stayed at THQ's office until the company went bankrupt in December of 2012. So now somebody is asking $300,000. I'm not sure if this really is gold. If it is, it would be incredibly heavy. You wouldn't really be able to hold up the controller. Probably wouldn't be able to even play the Wii. Just from the heat issues. Although maybe gold would actually make a pretty decent heat sink. I would almost certainly assume that this would have been a fake gold thing designed to be given to the Queen, and clearly somebody dropped the ball as far as doing an investigation to see if the Queen would actually accept it, because almost certainly the answer would have just been a direct no. We will not accept this promotional material and allow you to claim you've given this to the Queen. I imagine the Queen barely accepts anything other than letters. And sure, if you are a big politician, you could probably give something to the Queen. You could probably bribe the Prime Minister, whoever that was, a lot easier than the Queen, too. Alright, and now for some stupid news. Sega has partnered with Double Jump Tokyo to sell NFTs of classic game assets. I don't think this thought deserves any more breath from my lungs, frankly. NFTs. I mean, I cannot even begin to think I would believe that NFTs are going to be a thing. I'm more thinking that a potential new Bitcoin competitor would be something worth investing and talking about than NFTs. Because, like, I think the creator of BitTorrent is thinking about making a kind of Bitcoin type cryptocurrency that would work off hard drive space. I have a lot of hard drives. I have them for better reasons probably than crypto mining, but heck, I might think about doing that. Then sitting on it for 30 years if I can live that long, and then selling that if it became a big thing. But it also could be just nothing. And inherently, the idea of building a cryptocurrency around hard drive space, particularly hard drive space that has to be free hard drive space, um, that really just opens the door to massive inflation of hard drive and non-volatile memory SSD prices skyrocketing in the same way that graphics cards have skyrocketed. So that idea is probably a terrible idea. Gamma Sutra has an article here. You can join Infinity Ward as a lead tools tester in Woodland Hills, California.
Perish in my flame.
A 3D side-scrolling action RPG Dungeon Fighter Overkill has been announced for PC. It's interesting variety of character design here. Like, this character and this character feel like they're almost in the same universe, but this character feels more like from a Chinese game, and this is more kind of like a Japanese game, and this kind of more like a Japanese set in the real world game. It's like all over the... It really doesn't feel like the same group of people. But it is a fighting game, so would that make sense? Like, even looking here, it does seem like all the characters seem... This is a fighting game, right? Did I misread? It does seem like it's all over the place. No, it's an RPG game. Side-scrolling action RPG, Dungeon and Fighter, Overkill. Oh, the name of it is Dungeon and Fighter. Yeah, there might be something to that. But there might be nothing to it also. Let's see. A Japanese mythology RPG for Switch launches July 22nd. And PSV version seemingly cancelled. It's called Susano Japanese Mythology. Alright, nothing. I guess more to say to that. Famitsu has its review scores for issue 1692, which right now is just Famicom Detective Club, The Missing Heir, The Girl Who Stands Behind for 31 out of 40, so not particularly a greatly reviewed game. Also, I think this might be a re-release of an old game because it's called Famicom Detective Club, but maybe not. Let's see. Gamatsu has Yoshinori Ono has been appointed the president and chief operating. I don't know what COO stands for, actually. Chief operating. What would COO stand for? Well, CEO of a company called The Lightworks. He was the former Capcom game producer. Chief Operating Officer. Oh, that was easier than it should have. Yeah, I should have figured that out. Because I was forgetting the officer part, and it's the same as Chief Executive Officer. He worked for Capcom, where he served for nearly 30 years, and he left in the summer of 2022. And this may be the beginning of us seeing a lot of people who are left for working for a company like Capcom, and all of a sudden are now being hired or by new companies or starting new businesses. See, Gamatsu has Hood, Outlaws and Legends post-launch and Year 1 pass trailer, if you're interested in that. Trying to... Some of this is just trailer announcements. Super Mario Party version 1.1.0 update is now available and it adds online multiplayer 2.5 years after its release, which, yeah, you'd almost expect if that announcement was going to come out, you might as well announce that Microsoft was the one that got the multiplayer to work in the first place. And apparently 10 minigames are not available when you're playing online, which that sucks too. I guess it does at least show that Nintendo is trying to make their online services work.
My blade is your salvation. Put your legs into each
I
prayer.
wanted to punch you
Back
some
straight,
more.
eyes forward.
You just don't get it.
There we go. Yeah, but that is fairly disappointing to say, yeah, 2 years later, Mario Party got multiplayer. Let's see, Earth Defense Force 2 Invaders from Planets Space and Earth Defense Force 2017 are coming to Switch. Update. Both are ports with similar specifications to the PS Vita versions. Which still would really like to see one of the Earth Defense Forces games play well and look good, but I'm not sure they ever will. Game Master has Override 2 Super Mech League DLC character Dan Morobashi now available, which I've seen this character, but I have not heard of him called Dan Morobashi, which, what would he have been known as? Ultraman? Is that kind of Ultraman? He is the 4th member of the Ultraman crew joining the fight. So there's probably been like 4 different Ultramans, and they're calling him by a specific name. That would make sense.
Look to the zenith. There, I
Is
will
that how you
rise.
treat a lady? Another time then.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam, Clan O'Connell and the Crown of the Stag, which seems to be
My victim today.
several player versus player platforming type games, or a Metroidvania. Not sure. Let's see, 3D, 2D platformer Mythology hand drawn, $14.99. English, Japanese, Korean, and Chinese full audio, allegedly.
No way.
Seems like there's 4 different characters you can swap between for 4 different play styles. Handcrafted levels, it says. Some of these levels look like they might be a little bit frustration-y, platform-wise. This might be one of those games where it's doing 2 or 3 different things, so nobody really likes it, because it's a jack of all trades, master of none type scenario. But I will put it on the follow list because otherwise I do see a decent amount of polish and effort here, and at the very least it should be rewarded with a chance.
Wings of light. Show your might.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent. Still got far to go. Let judgment
that.
fall. Damn, I lowballed you.
A fair a day keeps the doctor away.
Not bad.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Astralis, which looks like it's pixely graphics for a first-person shooter. $2.99 English only. I don't see anything there of interest.
Don't work is
see.
never a waste of time.
Scarlet Nexus has an environment highlight video.
Will, oh Lord.
I'm not sure I remember what Scarlet Nexus is. It looks like a CG kind of RPG type game. There's quite a few different environments from the looks of it, which that's interesting, I suppose. And this. And then this. And then attack that. See, Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin has its third trailer and screenshots. According to Nikamatsu, if you're interested in checking that out, it is, I think, already wishlisted on Steam. See, the screenshots are loading fairly well here. And that's not as good. More and more as I tweak my network, it does kind of feel like you kind of have to just let it wait for half a second so it can get that initial download. And there's no way to kind of hide that or cheat that. Or there are ways to highlight it and cheat it, but it usually is not worth the negative effects of doing that.
I suppose I've lost some of my edge.
See, do I want to keep on? Yeah, I think I'll just keep on playing and I'll win. Monster Hunter Rise version 2.0 launches the 28th of April. According to Gamatsu.
I've been training hard for this day.
Miitopia for the Switch demo is now available. If that interests you, I don't know why it really should interest anybody, but it does kind of highlight another push of Nintendo to bring its online service in line with something that makes sense. Let's just go ahead and hit that.
Still got far to go.
And hit that. Ooh.
You're in good hands. Forgive me.
Gamatsu has the romance visual novel Kakanuke Seishun Sparkling coming to the PS4 and Switch on August 26th in Japan. This is another table instance to look at if we're going to talk about real pushes for censorship. You have here the PlayStation 4. They're not even bothering to try and make a PlayStation 5 game where they've put the logo specifically over the skirts of the characters to de-emphasize that, which in a funny way almost emphasizes it because you've got enough of a gap here to see an inner thigh, whereas the Switch Nintendo version of it, which is a slightly taller case, but there's really no reason that things should change that much. They let the skirts completely be shown, and you can actually see in this case you're just going to get the shadow of an inner thigh anyways, and then you have kind of the exact same thing here in this instance where they haven't changed the art for the Switch and PS4 versions, and in this instance the PS4 is just done as an outline instead of being in the top left, and like still same amount of cleavage, text is in the same place. Here they put a full bar to squish the image down, and they literally did squish the image down, so the faces are wider here than they are there. So yeah, but the direct cover art being censored, I don't know how much of a concern that really is. I mean, it's a little bit of a concern, but also I would be much happier to hear that they had to censor the cover art in to sell it in stores, but they didn't censor any of the actual content in the game, versus the opposite of, oh, we censored the content of the game and the cover art, or we censored the content in the game but we kept the cover art the same. Because at the end of the day, the cover art for these games is just a stationary image. This one is visual novel Kami-sama no Yu na Kimi e, coming to PS4 and Switch on August 26th. A, I think, is a question mark in Japanese. So it would be Kima Sama. So Kami Sama, which would probably be an older senior student who is the YOU, which I don't know what that stands for, translates to. So yeah, I can't fully translate this. Then if we look at the art, once again, full bars to squish down the image. And then because it's squished down, they have to move the logo down further and move their own logo up to the top. But yeah, and because it's squished down, they end up covering the skirt, but once again, not a big deal. But then more and more, I guess, PlayStation 4 versions have gotten so much flack for censorship. They've made the reversible covers, which I think that's what these are, or these are the limited edition covers, the same, and they're not really squishing down the images. So in a weird way, it seems to me like they are Sony is pushing only the standard versions to be censored, and they don't really care about the limited edition versions. See, you see that next in the visual novel Amamane 2 coming on September 16th. Again, well, this one almost feels like they blurred it some to hide the bottom of these sports bloomers, I believe are what they're called. She's a baseball themed character. And there is no limited edition art on this one. So yeah. Of course, I haven't heard of a lot of controversy lately around PlayStation 4 versions being heavily censored. I think they are getting fairly ahead of the story, and that has allowed for there to be less complaints when people just straight up admit that it's going to be censored at the beginning, or they censor both versions at the beginning and quietly don't complain about it. I think a lot of the Japanese developers are just kind of taking the censorship demands and rolling with it. See, next we have a game on Steam called Crossy Bridge with 2 S's. I'm not sure if that's how you actually spell it, but this does not look like a game called Crossy Bridge that has existed in the past. And if this is that old cell phone game, well, this looks boring. 59 cents English only. Next we have a game on Steam called Traffic 5. I think we already talked about this. A cell phone game where you control the stoplights. $4.79 English only, way too expensive. Then we have Reagan Earth First Strike. Or Regain Earth First Strike. Just looks like a first person shooter that has a little bit of polish on it, so there might actually be a game here. Early access, $14.24, English only, third party EULA. We'll put it on the fall list. We're seeing a massive amount of games though that have third party EULAs, and I'm not appreciating that.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Everyone needs an afterlife plan.
So yeah, I would like to see less games with these third party EULAs. Here we have Pure Bowl VR, which we've absolutely needed this for a very long time as far as VR games. It's so obvious that a just nicely programmed, nicely done bowling game would make sense in VR. Early access, $16.99. That's not too expensive for VR. English full audio. Unfortunately, because it is full VR, all I can do is put it on the fall list. Same is true because it's early access. But if this eventually comes out of early access and is well reviewed, I'll leave it on my follow list as the curation of potential VR games that I might buy if I ever buy a VR headset will grow. Of course, with all these like United States stimulus checks, it never occurred to me for even a second to buy a VR headset. So that was never a consideration. Let's see. Do we want to kill something or do we want to play something? Do this. And then do this.
It looks like I'm up.
Everyone needs an afterlife plan.
In the turn. See, next we have a game on Steam called Skeletal Avenger, which looks like it's a kind of pixely dungeon crawler game. Almost feels like there might be something to this. It's kind of like a Diablo game. $15.29 English only. I'm going to be generous and put this on the fall list, but honestly I don't think, if I am going to start trying to cover more Diablo-esque games, playing one that's pixely makes sense. I think I want something with better graphics than that. Let's see. Gamatsu has Swords of Legends Online lore trailer. Is this a game we've seen before? Looks very Chinese. I guess it would be an online MOBA anyways, so I don't think I would ever be able to play it or want to play it.
Where the wind blows, a
Yep.
path opens.
I think it probably says something that
Wind, grant them courage.
didn't even make it to the end of that. I didn't even make it to the end of the trailer. There. Word and Bane. Evolve. Destroy.
Go on, dear wind. Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
Let's see. I don't know why I clicked on this, but there's a PlayStation list here for a game called Heavy Burger, which seems to be like a Burger Time spin-off. Yeah, I don't know why I clicked on that, but I'll mention it. Let's see, Gamatsu has Genshin Impact for PS5 and version 1.5 update is now available.
And that
So
concludes
we had
today's survey.
2 bits of Genshin Impact news. There's a whole list here of every new content. With every new announcement, though, I don't think Genshin Impact is winning me over as a potential new player. And I think that might be a problem in general with many games. So as they start adding more content, that they start getting further and further away from being new player friendly.
A fair a day keeps the doctor away. You're in good hands.
There we go. Let's see, Gamatsu has Guilty Gear Strive second open beta set for May 13th to May 16th. Which, okay. that might interest somebody. Monster Hunter Rise shipments and digital sales have topped 6 million, according to Gematsu. Persona 3 Striker shipments and digital sales top 1.3 million. Clearly there was a big announcement of Japanese games because we've got a decent amount of these announcements. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD remaster shipments of top 250,000, which I think that is a fairly high number considering how this character looks so weird. Like, not knowing that character, that is totally not new player friendly as a character, as your main mascot, although in all fairness, it may not really matter. Anyways, because it being the third game in the series probably isn't for new players. The Legend of Heroes Hajimari no Kisake for Switch and PC launches August 26th in Japan and Asia.
I traverse dimensions to defeat you.
Got some trailers. Says it's an RPG. Just look, I guess, at the Japanese trailer. Although arguably, maybe I should look at the Korean trailers. Oh. Almost certainly all the trailers look the same and just have different audio. Yep, it looks like a JRPG. A lot of sword fighting, a lot of highlighting of characters. Have a lot of Gematsu tabs. Let's see. Everyday Today's menu for Emiya family launches June 2nd in the West. This is the Fate series spinoff, although arguably at this point I'm not sure even the Fate series is particularly relevant. Let's see. They also have Earth Defense Force 2 Invaders from Planet Space for Switch with its debut trailer, which we kind of had already talked about this, but there is actually some trailers here. You can see you're running around in a first-person shooter element. There's just text all over this. Even they know their game doesn't look good. It's just a remake of... All it is if the Japanese made Starship Troopers is the Earth Defense series, then it works as a concept fairly decently. Let's see, for smartphones, Ni no Kuni Crossworlds story trailer is available, which kind of want to check that out, so let's see what happens. Well, that looks very nice for a cell phone game still. The Ni no Kuni series still trying real hard to appeal visually. I'm glad to see it, instead of them just boiling themselves down into lesser graphics. See, Gematsu also has Earth Defense Force 6 debut trailer, platform still unconfirmed, and this would be the newest Earth Defense Force game, I imagine. And yeah, this looks better. And they're highlighting a lot of effects here, a lot of blood splatter, explosion, lighting effects. It probably doesn't, though, look as good as it should, and that is kind of always a problem with Earth Defense Force games, where there's just not quite enough visual polish here. So we're fighting these giant alien bugs and monsters. Yep. I hope this game sells though and plays well, because if Earth Defense Force does well, maybe they would have enough funding and ambition to make Earth Defense 7 actually look good. Let's see.
Fresh manna melons and potion fruit.
Hit that and hit that. Rune Factory 5, a tour with Chief Levia, a 5-minute stroll through Rig Birth trailer. Well, what's the game? Rune Factory 5. Yeah. After that, giving the trailer its own name. Okay. You can kind of see the lesser quality animation here. And the visual novel style, flat 2D animations that they're going to use for conversations. Yep, I'm not being really sold on Rune Factory 5, although in all fairness, just it being the 5th game in a series creates a issue.
Such a good guinea pig.
Yep. See, Gamatsu says the PS5 shipments have topped 7.8 million and PS4 has topped 115.9 million, which those are two numbers you probably do not want next to each other, to really just highlight how few PlayStation 5s have been made and sold. Of course, I have no idea what the numbers right now would be for the Xbox Series, so they might be very comparable. Right, so you can play this.
Howl cyclones.
Bring that in,
Be gone.
and then in the turn, I guess. Gamatsu has an article here. A hand-drawn puzzle platformer Out of Line launches this summer for the Switch and PC, and later for the PS4 and Xbox One. Do we have a bit of a trailer here?
Gizmos like this every millennium.
It looks like it's a puzzle platforming game. Mostly just a walking game. Kind of like Limbo, but not as dark looking. Okay. What do we want to do to this? Hit this.
Impossible.
Put this in the field, I guess. Just in the turn there. A PC game called Needy Girl Overdose launches June 5th.
Impossible.
See, it's already available on Steam. Yeah. That certainly doesn't sound like something that would be appealing. Is it that an anime girl jumps out of your computer? There's a very old anime that basically is that same plot. Can't remember the name of it. It was fairly popular and well known in the early 80s. This definitely feels like this might be a horror game in disguise, or a surreal, crazy game in disguise. But yeah, this screenshot does not sell the game well compared to what I just saw. Alright, well, see how this works. Russian Drain, Bacon and Ward. And then in the turn there, I guess. Guess I could put Needy Girl Overdose on the fall list. I'm not sure I really have a reason to put it on the fall list though. Does totally look like a troll game to me. So I think I'm gonna say no to that thought. Neo shipments and digital sales have topped 2 million, and the series has topped 5 million, which is, I suppose, an interesting way to say Neo 1 and Neo 2 topped 5 million. Let's see. A Super Nintendo game revival, Nightmare Busters Rebirth, has been announced for consoles and PC. Which there might be something here, but I doubt it, and I don't recall a game ever called Nightmare Busters. So that feels weird as a potential game. Okay. At the end of your turn, deal 8 damage to all other followers.
Coming at you.
Okay.
For a world without conflict.
That. And that. And end turn. See, Samurai Warriors 5 has 22 minutes of gameplay, according to Gamatsu. Which, Samurai Warriors is one of the Warriors games where you go up and down, I think, and fight hundreds of enemies. So let's see if we can... 22 minutes of gameplay isn't even that much for that style of game. Yep. You just do a whole bunch of button mashing and hack and slash games. These are the kind of games that I don't think I can ever play again or would want to play again, because it's just so much button mashing unless you've that it causes like my arthritis in my hands to hurt. So it's just not something I'm willing to even experiment with.
Big trouble now.
Or risk.
My beloved little sister.
Okay. Let's see, I'm just trying to wrap up here more than anything. Sunless Skies Sovereign Edition launches May 19th for the PC, PS4, Switch, and Xbox One. I don't think Sunless Skies ever caught my attention as a game, because it just kind of looked weird and dark and boring, and I'm not sure you're really getting anything new with Sovereign Edition that would change any of those first impressions. Let's see. I'm just gonna cycle through the tournament decks going forward, that way I can potentially get higher in rank than C1. Kimetsu has Expeditions Rome announced for PC. Turn-based RPG is due out in 2021. Let's see, I think we can probably spice this up a little bit. Here we have a game on Steam called Clodhoppers, which looks like it's a player versus player game. Free to play, single player, and online PvP. English only.
The pleasure's mine.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's a clone of Worm's World Party with clay animation, which that would be a lot of work. But the thing here is you don't have to tell me that this was a student project, I think, to make me interested in it. And I don't think that is the case. It also is making fun of Hicks slash like Central American, Central United Statesian citizens who sometimes can be Hicks, but also sometimes can be surprising, you know, away from the stereotype. And then we have a game on Steam called Defiance and Mr. Good Looking, which sounds like a ridiculous name for what looks like a ridiculous game. Although, why are the images not loading? Interesting. We had just a small brief instability there, and that was it. And then everything's back to working. Good. $8.99, English, Portuguese, Brazil. That doesn't look like anything that interests me. And see, that's the kind of network trouble I'd like to see going forward, is just maybe a second pause, a second of loading. I don't want to see anything higher than that. TechRaptor has War Mongols as a promising but unsteady war story, which I don't think this game is out yet. So TechRaptor more and more is just talking about older or games that aren't coming out yet. Gamasutra has an approach and understanding to understanding art styles as a blog. Yep, this is a new blog. Organic, geometric, simple, complex, flat, 3D, static, dynamic. That's a weird way to depict static and dynamic. 4 circles, 1 star. That's a weird way to explain positive space and negative space. And then they're going like high key, low key, high contrast, low contrast, no lighting. I'm not sure I believe everything that's being said here, as far as my own personal understanding of things. And here they're going with like your color palettes and different games, you know, different images. Some of this definitely should be taught, but it should be taught in like a six months to a year long art appreciation class for anybody making video games, not just in a blog situation. And yeah, a picture plane between abstraction, reality, and language, which that's a weird split. It's a weird choice, in my opinion, to go that way. Do that. And then you're making some generalizations here as far as the appeal between childs and adults, and popularity between independent and mainstream, which these really don't feel accurate, or these feel very opinionated. Like most blogs, it's mostly opinion. And then talking specifically about the art style of Control, the art style of Control kind of sucks. Now, don't get me wrong, the brutalist architecture and the boldness to go with brutalist architecture in your design is interesting for Control. So it is fairly interesting to have the walls and look like some kind of brutalist architecture, Soviet style, like factory office type facility. But the actual art style of your main character, she's just like kind of wearing all black. The art style of all the enemies, they're kind of all red. You never get out of this brutalist architectural area except for when you're in the hotel, and the hotel looks very generic and bland too. There's just kind of nothing there. And then if you compare it to like a sniper game like this, which I assume this is one of the Sniper Elite games, that's going for realistic depiction, so that also doesn't particularly feel very artistic. You're really not doing much artistically speaking if you're simply copying what you observe in the real world. Photography has artistic composition, certainly, but if you're just taking a picture and you're not modifying it or adjusting the brightness, contrast, color balance, or anything, you're really not adding anything to make it an artistic creation in my mind. See what else they're talking about. But yeah, people do need a better understanding in general of art, and that's why there should be more art classes. Ironically, there is now a push for, instead of STEAM, which would be science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, which at that point that only leaves out athletics. That's every single class that would have ever been taught in the elementary, junior high, or high school. And I jokingly think we are probably only a few years away from them promoting a STEAM, in which they'll just add athletics to it, and then the only other thing you could really add on top of that would be languages. So and then it might turn into all STEAM, or they'll mix it all around again to do a backronym to make it spell something law STEAM. But even STEM, in a lot of ways, kind of had to justify including the 4 things it did include, but it kind of makes sense. You're not going to do science without mathematics, and you're not going to do engineering without mathematics and science, but you could definitely do science without engineering, and you could do science and mathematics and engineering without that much technology, which really STEAM boiled down to technology first and foremost. They just didn't want to call it computer class because there already was a computer class, and the emphasis of computers and computer classes was a previous generation's overemphasized field, which certainly I felt that when I was in school. There was a lot of push to the idea that everybody would use computers and everybody needed to know how to program, and it's just not true. Everybody does use computers, but the computers are in your pocket as a cell phone, and they're dumbed down completely. Nobody really needs typing classes, and nobody needs to know how to like work with punch cards or some of the technologies or tape drives and things like that. Those are long since dead technologies.
It looks like I'm up.
Let judgment fall.
Moving on, Gamma Sutra has a GDC video, verbal interactions with artificially intelligent NPCs, which, yeah, that might be an interesting idea. Let's see, for a 30-minute video, the idea of potentially being able to just turn on a microphone and talk to NPCs might speed things up, but almost certainly wouldn't, because how often, even now, have we been able to convert conversations over to things like an Alexa or a Siri. You can give them very, very basic commands if you know the commands, and that is it. Everything else is beyond the possible reach of understanding for an Alexa or a Siri.
Let judgment fall.
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
Let's see. Gametsu has the Returnal the Tide launch trailer. Returnal is either about to launch and reviewers have it. Yeah, it's coming out April 30th, so a couple days. People seem to mostly like it, but not like the full price tag of a AAA game for what is a roguelike game. Right. So we shall do
The world ends.
this,
The world cycles on.
and then
There
we
is not a
shall
soul
do
without sin.
this,
Wings of light, show your might.
and hope that
Punish
hits
the wicked.
this.
Spare the innocent.
Didn't,
Let
whatever.
judgment fall.
The world cycles on.
Then we're just gonna end the turn there. See, Gametsu has a Cosmic Top Secret coming to PS4, Xbox One, and Switch on May 21st. This looks like a troll game. Seems like Gametsu more and more
Soul without sin.
has found a new source of these kind of like joke troll games, which
Punish the wicked.
feels like
Spare the innocent.
we might be seeing Japanese announcements of joke troll games more and more. Maybe they're just getting in the business that we've seen Russia and China do as far as making these terrible games. Right.
There is not a soul without sin.
Once again,
I
evolve.
will save you, no matter the cost.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent. Let judgment
It's still not
fall.
enough to kill
By
it.
your will, O Lord.
And let's see. See, if you do more than 3 times, it doesn't do anything, so you should just end
By your
there.
will, O Lord.
Let's see, Gametsu has an arcade action shoot 'em up roguelike called Gear Shifters, announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC,
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
which, you know, like car battling games,
A
if done well,
keeps the doctor
might be
away.
interesting.
Foliar.
Not sure that this side-scrolling shoot 'em up idea with cars really interests me, but
Each prayer.
it's probably more interesting to have a car-themed version of a side-scrolling shoot 'em up than a Toho anime witches side-scrolling shoot 'em up game. Because frankly, there's just so many Toho games. It's a little scary to even think about potentially trying to cover them. A historical action thriller called Treasures for the Aegean has been announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC,
Punish the wicked.
which
Spare the innocent.
apparently it's on Steam. Treasure of the Aegean, not for the Aegean. See, this might be where a Doctor Who, not Doctor Who, an Indiana Jones concept of a game might make sense. Where you're running and jumping and solving puzzles. And it seems like she has some time manipulation power. to get through kind of this Metroidvania type world. It seems like she's not just stealing something from from the government or the police. It seems like she's stealing it from bad guys, although maybe not. Maybe that's UN police that she's running away from. Okay. Let's go and do this. And do that. And do that. And then end the turn. So yeah, here's the game on Steam. I'll put it on the follow list even though it's not out yet. Yeah, I think this would be a pretty good Indiana Jones game. Probably a decent Tomb Raider game concept too. But you don't really need the license of Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider to make a new hero character. Also, yeah, we have a game on Steam called Sword in Space, which looks just like an RPG Maker game for $4.24, English and Chinese. Right, well, this needs to be played. So do that.
The zenith. For there I will rise.
And then just need to kill some of those, I suppose. And then I guess hit that and heal. And then I guess hit that and heal. I need like one more heal. See, next we have a game on Steam called Token War, which just looks like a board game using tokens, kind of like a card game with placement. $9.74, English only. I don't think there's enough polish here to put that on the follow list. Here we have a game called Gathalt, or Gathalt. Can't even pronounce it. Looks just like a dark screenshot asset flip first person horror shooter. $10.99 Russian. Right, well. Restored defense.
This is where I truly shine.
Smack that. I guess that works. In the turn.
So disappointed in myself.
Here we have a game on Steam called In Matre, the First Moon, which
So long as there is life.
just looks like a low polygon puzzle game of some sort. It looks pretty badly polished. $6.99 English, Portuguese, Brazil. See, TechCrafter has everything announced in the April 2021 Monster Hunter digital event. If you want to check that out. I think we probably covered most, if not all of those stories already. TechRaptor has Immortals Phoenix Rising, The Lost Gods review. See what they have to say. They give it a 7.0. The Lost Gods is by far the most adventurous DLC and the most fascinating to play, but it's still bogged down with the same mistakes made before. This is absolutely the DLC you should play, but it's still not as fun as the base game.
Mother, father,
Which, okay, I'm not even going to bother to read the pros and cons. You can check it out yourself. Seems like Immortals Phoenix Rising as a game is just doomed to forever fail. Take-Raptor has a Pokemon Go Fest 2021 start date set for the summer. Which, okay. Pokemon Go, I guess, is go. Let's see. A free Monster Hunter Rise item pack has launched. Which you can get somehow, I guess. I don't even know how. I don't care enough about Monster Hunter Rise, so I'll just say check out the article if you're interested. The game El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron now has a Steam listing, so it's slowly making its way to being an actual real thing as far as the PC version of or port of this fairly old game at this point. Open Critic has new Pokemon Snap reviews. The top critic average is giving it 82. Critics that recommend it are 95%. There's some repetitive progression, but it has nostalgic fun and a sense of discovery. So, according to these reviews. Alright. That's good news to hear. I don't generally commit to anything based on Open Critics' Metacritic style of reviewing games, but it is nice to hear that everybody seems to be on the same page, although arguably I tend not to even agree with everybody a lot of times. Gematsu has Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach launching in late 2021. I still feel like this is the this is the Five Nights at Freddy's game to potentially reboot the series into being a better game. And apparently it's delayed, so they're going to release a free side-scrolling beat-em-up called Security Breach Fury's Rage for PC via Game Jolt, which is definitely not Steam.
You look kinda haunted.
So I'll probably never check it out. Let's see. Habbo, I almost misread this as Hasbro, owner Azurion has raised $242 million to finance more game acquisitions. I don't recognize either one of these companies' names though. But there definitely are some acquisitions happening as far as cell phone and mobile games. Reanimate 3.
Aren't you popular?
Yep, I can see the beginning of the end, so we need to hurry up. Take-Raptor has Tasamachi behind the Twilight review. Actually, it doesn't make any sense if you see the beginning of the end of the news. You don't particularly need to go any faster than you were. They give it a 3.0. So, yeah, that's what I had seen. Also, is that it basically wasn't a game. And that was definitely my fear from the way it looked, is that it could very easily not actually be a game and really just be a large load of trickery.
Detestable. 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 No way.
See, Gematsu has Metro Exodus PC Enhanced Edition launching May 6th. Free upgrade for existing owners. I guess that would be a good argument to going back and playing it if you had skipped it because of the Epic Games exclusive. It is now on Steam and Good Old Games also. Arguably, this also kind of highlights the fact that playing any game in day one is going to quickly turn into a mistake, because you're going to get some enhanced edition 6 months to 2 years later that will make the game better. And for most PC gamers that have plenty of games to play, you really are never going to have a lot of time to play a game twice, even if you really love it. Like, I've played Portal twice and Borderlands games twice, and that's pretty much it in the past 15, 20 years. Pinball games, slightly different situation there as far as whether I've played it twice or not. Alright, well, can't kill that one. That sucks.
Does this outfit make me look too old?
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Prince of Wallachia, which feels like it's an attempt at a Prince of Persia game, but different graphics, different area. There might be a thought here. $5.59, English full audio. We'll give it a follow. It also, though, kind of looks a little rough as far as the heads-up display and the animation styles. It may get fairly repetitive. It might just highlight a lot of the problems in general with Prince of Persia as a game, and as the original Prince of Persia game had problems. And those can't be just immediately ignored. So this...
You look kinda haunted. No!
And then
Literally.
this...
You intend to bury me?
And then...
Isn't this magic? I am eternal!
that.
My body may rot, but I won't stop.
See, Game & Sutra has Xbox hardware revenue is up 232% after the first full quarter of the Xbox Series X and S, which this definitely does highlight that consoles do kind of have to constantly come out with new versions. You couldn't just say the Xbox One Pro or whatever was before the Series X. I guess that would be the Xbox One X. Couldn't have just said that is the end all be all of hardware, and they didn't need to make a new one, because the technology gets older, it's not as fast, it's not as flashy, it's not as exciting, if nothing else. Let's see, Gamatsu has Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade co-directors discuss Yuffie Kisaragi in episode intermission. So there's an interview here if you're interested. I'm not sure anybody really should be. Yep. Might get around to actually playing Final Fantasy VII Remake by the time they, like a year or two after they release all of it, which may be a decade in the making. One more Forestcraft victory to get a classic card pack ticket, which is interesting because classic card pack tickets are not even playable. And then we're somewhat close to getting at least 50 victories in general with every character. So all these little rewards still proving to be somewhat rewarding even about a year into playing Shadowverse. Here we have a game on Steam called Armored Express, which seems to be a match 3 game where they put the match 3 on the side and then they show kind of a low effort animation otherwise. Yeah, it's just bad design. Early access $19.99. TechRaptor has a article here. Good Old Games shares they had a fantastic 2020 financially. Almost certainly that would be the case because of Cyberpunk 2077, which surprisingly, Cyberpunk 2077, CD Projekt Red only refunded apparently about 35,000 copies of that game, and they left most of the refund work to their distribution partners who were not happy about it. Certainly, and that's why Cyberpunk 2077 I don't think is even now still not listed on the PlayStation Store. Let's see, TechRaptor has that same article. Five Nights at Freddy's security breach delayed, although they put it more obviously that it was delayed instead of an announcement of a different release date. Gamasutra has an article, GDC State of the Industry, devs irked by 30% storefront revenue cuts. Well, yeah, they definitely will be irked. They would have been irked if it was 15%. They would have been irked if it was 1%. They would have been irked if it's 60%. Like, no duh. Here we have a hack and slash game called To Hell With It, which it feels like acid flippy. Like, I'm not sure there's a real game here. It's like a you're in hell hacking and slashing creatures. Well, the video makes this game look a lot more interesting than the screenshots do, and you gotta be careful about that, certainly. This flat art style does not really work. It's free. English only. Is this some kind of student project? Or is this some kind of promotion of a comic book? That would explain why the art looks so bad. So yeah, they kind of were seemingly close to making a game and then they abandoned it. Wimpy Imp Games, what a terrible name for your company too. Alright, well I don't think I can put that on the fall list. Yeah, we have a game called Gas Station Simulator Prologue Early Days, which I cannot imagine you would really want to simulate running a gas station. It almost feels like there might actually be some story around this, but I think this is just shenanigans. Yeah, lockpicking in a gas station simulator. It's kind of crazy. Design. This is free. But then they're promoting this other game called Accident for $14.99, or Gas Station Simulator for coming soon, price unknown. Yep, I don't think that there's a real concept there as far as a game somebody would want to play. TechRaptor has that same article. Sega NFTs are coming from a new collaboration, which, yeah, not worth mentioning. Here we have a game on Steam, VHAIP, which they're calling it an open-ended escape game and stress game in VR, which makes it sound like it's just a mix mash of garbage ideas. $5.99, English and French, far too cheap for a VR game also. We have about 10 tabs. Here we have a game called Obsidian Prince on Steam, which looks like an isometric dungeon roguelike with pixel graphics and maybe some card-based mechanics. I don't like the visuals there. $11.99 discounted. English only. Yeah, I think that's just too ugly. Here we have a game called Alpha Particle, which seems to be, they're calling it a Metroidvania space game. To me, I guess that you'd just be flying around as a particle, almost in kind of like a pinball experience. That's all I can imagine. Or just a game where you're avoiding collision at all times. Like a one-hit kill game. $13.59, third-party EULA, English only. Yeah. I don't think there's a game there. Well, September 5th, this got retweeted, I think, by the ESA, by CNN Health. Video games help children improve literacy, communication, mental well-being. Survey finds. We probably had already talked about this, but it got retweeted, so I guess we'll mention it and take your personal beliefs as to how much you trust CNN Health versus any other division of CNN versus any other American news source. Let's see, moving on, Game of Sutra. Sony's video game division delivers record results as the PS5 sells 7.8 million units, which they're saying that's a record. I think inherently, though, you always are going to just break a record because there will always be more people. That's always more units to sell unless you really screw up. And there's always a way to break one record and report it like you broke one record, even if you barely did. Let's see. TechRaptor has Resident Evil Reverse, release date set for the summer of 2021. This is the multiplayer game that they are probably just using to drum up interest in Resident Evil Village. Here we have a game on Steam called Drunken Samurai, and I would never want to play a game that tilts left and right. One of the pinball tables I covered actually does have a real-world mod to it, where there is a drunken multi-ball that flips the flippers left and right. This is $2.39 English and Russian. I'm not going to put that on the follow list, obviously. But it's a weird thing, certainly, to have to buy an aftermarket ROM mod and kind of hack the original software of a real-world pinball to give it features that it's definitely missing and more features in general. But arguably, maybe that's what you always should do. Unfortunately, I think even getting a chip mailed to you would probably cost you at least $100, if not $400 or $500 to mod a game, a real-world pinball table. So there's just kind of not enough demand and high pricing on that. Theoretically, there should be mods for like every old pinball table to add more features and add more modes. Even if those mods do include licenses that they didn't get the license for, as far as images and music. Who cares, really? The Sinking City is now on Xbox Live for Xbox Series X and S, which is interesting because The Sinking City was one of those games that was disputed as to whether the publisher had the right to publish it or the owner of the IP developer had the right to own it, or who owned the IP in general. And The Sinking City in general was not that good. TechRaptor has an article here. 3 Stadia indie games have been funded by Play Anywhere Game Jam. One is a billiards game with some wavy hands for some reason. One's a floating around in space shooter, and one that looks like a platformer. There might be something to this idea of making a billiards game and making it more cutesy. Maybe. The other one is called Bushido Bots, and the third one is called Fragments. see, Gamma Sutra says Sony is going to invest another 183 million into first-party development and partnerships, which it kind of has to make that claim, and it kind of has to do that, take that action. Otherwise, Sony is going to be in real trouble in general, as far as not having any third-party or first-party games. Of course, the question really will come down to whether or not any of the first-party games for Sony are games people are interested in, or is it just going to be Last of Us 3 or something along that lines. And this is slightly video game related because there are Dragon Ball Z fighting games, but Shunsuke Kikuchi, the composer and musician of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, has passed away. His soundtracks will always be remembered. Rest in peace. So, yeah. A lot of old Japanese people that have worked on a lot of things are going to be passing away, either because of pandemic reasons or just because of age. And then I saved this story for the last because this personally affects me and it's weird. TechCrafter has this article. Uncertainty reigns as Spike Chunsoft has changed the Danganronpa streaming terms of service. First of all, who cares? It's all fair use or it's not. Second of all, there's a big problem with this in that Game Grumps less than 2 months ago covered all of Danganronpa from beginning to end, and maybe that triggered them to say you can't cover anything past the first chapter. I could certainly see why they wouldn't want you to cover any of the story past the first chapter, because it does just kind of show and expose the entire story of the game anyways. But like, here's the problem. You've got streamers like me who've spent hundreds of hours making footage. That footage has got to be scheduled and going out. So it's going out, period. And then I'll fight them as under fair use, I suppose, or just wait until they strike content ID claim or something. I never agreed to a streaming terms of service. It's also completely unfair, to whether legal or not, to let Game Grumps cover the game in its entirety and then change the rules. Plus, Danganronpa 1 is a fairly old game. Here, let's see. A new update to the streaming terms of service for visual novel series Danganronpa prevents Japanese players from sharing any footage past the first chapters of their games. However, there's uncertainty to just how extensive this restriction is and who it affects. See, this is just kind of like, well, I bought all of these games not agreeing to this new terms of service, so it's not legally enforceable for you to one-sidedly change the terms of service after the purchase, and it's not morally enforceable even if it's legally enforceable. Now, what this might do is if my footage personally comes out and messes up my channel and potentially has just a blank spot where no footage is airing for a very, very long time, that will stop me from playing Danganronpa 2. Like, that really sucks. There is major problems with visual novel games like Danganronpa in general, and that if their story is good, they need to be promoted as having good stories, but then also their stories are going to be in part spoiled a lot more than, say, Halo, where you generally already know the story of Halo. You're going to shoot some bad guys, but the actual movement and gameplay, the running, the jumping, the shooting, is much more varied. Visual novels don't have that. There's basically only two ways that you could have played Danganronpa 1, which is to have played it the right way and try to get 100% of all the content, or the wrong way and skip to the end, which arguably the wrong way might be the better way. But either way, you're going to end up spending a lot of time on Danganronpa. And it would have been very helpful if that series had varied up who the killers were and how it was done between 2 or 3 different scenarios. But there are no branching paths in the game except for one false ending and one good ending. And even the good ending ends on a cliffhanger. Let's see. I am now scrolling down my Twitter feed to click on any new news that has happened in the last 3.5 hours that's potentially worth talking about. But yeah, that sucks. Of course, that's the same sucky situation that we've seen from several Japanese companies and publishers, and it's dumb. Inherently, since I recorded the footage before the terms of services had even been updated, if I even thought the terms of service did apply to me in any way, which I don't feel like it does, at least morally speaking, which is the really important way to think in most cases. Like that's pretty much impossible to enforce something retroactively. At a certain point, if this YouTube channel was a big business and somebody changed the terms of service and I had spent 100 hours playing a game and making footage, I should be capable and able to sue them for that 100 hours of work and lost revenue and of losing that footage, which that footage in perpetuity might be worth a massive amount as far as the number of views you could get. And I suppose, speaking of Game Grumps, like, apparently the canceling of the Game Grumps guy, who, as the story went, as far as I could figure it out, is that he talked to somebody when they were underage, and then he hit on that same person years later when they were overage, and was maybe a little bit gross about how he was hitting on the person, but that was it. And somehow that person got upset and tried to cancel him with what seems like a very ridiculous, or at least weak, claim of grooming. At a certain point, I mean, how much grooming are you really doing if you talk to somebody once or twice when they're, well, even if you talk to them a lot when they're underage, and then you try to date them when they're overage. If a 17-year-old told another 17-year-old, let's not date until we're 18, is that grooming at that point? I wouldn't think most people would agree with that. Or like the worst case scenario is, say, you have a 20-year-old uncle that is asked by a 8-year-old, or let's do the math easy, a 10-year-old niece. The niece says, "Will you marry me, uncle?" And he just jokingly says yes. And then, let's say 20 years later, where the uncle is 40 and the niece is 30, which that'd still be a very, very wild thing. And it still would be creepy in Uncle Niece. It'd probably have to be like a distant cousin type scenario for most people to not trip over the uncle and niece part of it. But yeah, claiming that as grooming is kind of ridiculous. Like, I totally would be willing to indulge a little kid that said, "Hey, will you marry me someday?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure." Like, I do it to both genders. Niece or nephew is like, "Yeah, you want to marry me? Sure. I'll marry you when you're 20 years old." Just give them a long time, and more often than not, almost always that kid would forget they ever even said that, and you would just forget you'd ever said it too. Okay. Well, let's look at what we have as far as new news, and then we can wrap up the stream. Nordic PvP combat arena game Blood of Heroes has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Which is player versus player game, so I wouldn't play it anyways. Doesn't look bad, but it does kind of look just a lot like, what is it? For Honor. Which inherently, all of these sword looking games have that problem of not having good enough gameplay or animations. This one is going with more spears and maces and shields, so there might be a little bit more as far as interesting elements. We have a game on Steam here called Little Traveler, which, interesting. Looks like you're a little character running around platforming. Free. Interesting. English and Chinese. I'm going to put this on the follow list. It looks like it's inspired by The Borrowers. And that animation is not good as far as being able to jump and climbing down. You're not really holding on to anything. I feel like this game is going to be somewhat like it's clearly a stealth game element, but also I think it's going to be very much like I Am Bread as far as what you're actually trying to accomplish. Just getting from one point to another point and not touching the ground. But I want to put that on the follow list just to see how people review it, even though I wouldn't cover it. Here we have a game called The Last King's Archer, which is one of those games where you stand in one place and you shoot at the enemies on the left and right. 79 cents English. According to Gamasutra, modders have made $350 million through the Minecraft's official mod marketplace. I guess that's good for modders, but also I would say with the introduction of the Minecraft mod marketplace, I have not seen a massive increase of quality or even more mods. It feels like the same people that were making the free open free mods for Minecraft Java are still just making free things for Minecraft Java, and the greedy modders out there went to the marketplace. I guess they got their 350 million between all of the greedy people split, and I don't think that really benefited the quality of mods at all. And that's pretty much the same argument I'd make for any kind of paid marketplace for Skyrim mods or any other game with mods, is that I really feel like mods should be mostly free. Modders, inherently, I don't come from the perspective that people deserve to be paid for their work. I come from the perspective that people deserve to be fed and clothed and taken care of because they're human beings, even if they don't work or create anything that anybody else appreciates. So as such, from that perspective, that I think all people should just be taken care of in a universal basic income type sense, I don't really feel like modders should be paid for their work, nor do I really feel like programmers should be paid for their work. I think they should be artists who get prestige and esteem from their work if they do a good job, and that's really what should motivate people, is that they should do things that they have passion for and that they want to show off their skill and talent for. They want to get that prestige and esteem, not just money, because the second you throw money into it, you start the path of corruption, you start the path of greed. Money is just an arbitrary number. There will never be enough money in anyone's mind. And that's a toxic way to kind of live. Let's see. Gamasutra has an article. A mobile company, Wildlife, has opened a development studio, Super WoW Games. Let's see. Disaster Report 4 Summer Memories is not new, but it is on 40% off for $35.99, which is still way too expensive. I feel like the Disaster Report developers and the Earth Defense Force developers should work together, and if they got merged together, then you'd have a story with an interesting story and better animation, almost certainly. This is also, I believe, the first Disaster Report game to actually come out to the West and support English in a Western release. See, Gamasutra as Stadia announces and launches its next big feature, a search bar, which is practically a joke. It's totally a joke at this point. And then Gamasutra has a job listing here for Seismic Squirrel as a senior gameplay designer in Issaquah, Washington. Which I don't know where Issaquah, Washington is, but Washington's not that big of a state, so it's probably somewhat close to Redmond, Washington. Yep, and I guess that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and give me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.